श्री चतुश्लोकी स्वादयन्निह सर्वेषां त्रय्यन्तार्थं सुदुर्ग्रहम् स्तोत्रायामास योगीन्द्रः तं वन्दे यामुनाह्वयम् यत्पदाम्भोरुहध्यान विध्वस्ताशेषकल्मषः वस्तुतामुपयातोऽहम् यामुनेयन्नमामि तम् नमो नमो यामुनाय यामुनाय नमो नमः नमो नमो यामुनाय यामुनाय नमो नमः कान्तस्ते पुरुषोत्तमः पणिपतिश्शय्यासनं वाहनम् वेदात्मा विहगेश्वरो यवनिका माया जगन्मोहिनी ब्रह्मेशादिसुरव्रजः सदयितस्त्वद्दासदासी गणः श्रीरित्येव च नामते भगवति ब्रूमः कथं त्वां वयम् यस्यास्ते महिमानमात्मन इव त्वद्वल्लभोऽपि प्रभुः नालं मातुमियत्तया निरवधिं नित्यानुकूलं स्वतः तान् त्वां दास इति प्रपन्न इति च स्तोष्म्याम्यहं निर्भयः लोकैकेश्वरि लोकनाथ दयिते दान्ते दयान्ते विदन् ईशत्वत्करुणा निरीक्षणसुधा सन्धुक्षणाद्रक्ष्यते नष्टं प्राक्तदलाभतस्त्रिभुवनं सम्प्रत्यनन्तोदयम् श्रेयो न ह्यरविन्दलोचनमनः कान्ताप्रसादादृते संसृत्यक्षरवैष्णवाद्वसुनृणां सम्भाव्यते कर्हिचित् शान्तानन्तमहाविभूतिपरमं यद्ब्रह्मरूपं हरेः मूर्तं ब्रह्म ततोऽपि तत्प्रियतरं रूपं यदद्यद्भुतम् यान्यन्यानि यथा सुखं विहरतो रूपाणि सर्वाणि तानि आहुस्वैरनुरूपरूपविभवैर्गाढोपगूढानि ते आकारत्रयसम्पन्नाम् अरविन्दनिवासिनीम् अशेषजगदीशित्रीं वन्दे वरदवल्लभाम् इति श्रीचतुश्लोकी समाप्ता। Ishvara Pranidhanadva. So, last time we began the sutra number 23 of the first chapter, Ishvara Pranidhanadva. And we described how Patanjali is bringing in the concept of Ishvara for the first time and presents it as a way towards reaching the state of Chittavritti Nirodha. So in a certain way it becomes like an upayam. And last time I spoke to you about the concept of Ishvara as an entity which is representing knowledge, and it is representing a source of clarity and teachings, etc. That it is not the creator or destroyer like other religions are talking, etc. Having said that, it's also important to consider other views of commentators that present or write about this concept of Ishvara Pranidhana. Today, I particularly would like to take a little bit of inspiration from Acharya Krishnamacharya's own understanding of the Ishvara Pranidhana Sutra, and how he looks at this sutra of who is Ishvara and what is Pranidhanam. Acharya Krishnamacharya belongs to what is called as the Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya, Vishishta Advaita tradition, and this is very important for his belief system or his tradition of looking at things as Ishvara in a certain way, and that is why today we also started the chant today with what is called as Chatushloki. In the Sri Vaishnava tradition, Ishvara is never alone. Ishvara is not presented as a singularity, but rather Ishvara is presented as Ishvara and Ishvari, which means the divine is represented both as masculine and feminine, as dual attributes of male and female. That is why in the Sri Vaishnava tradition it is called Sri Vaishnava tradition, because it is representing Narayana along with Shri, who is goddess Lakshmi, also known as Sri Devi. So the two are presented together as one entity and they are not separate. That's why when Krishnamacharya interprets the sutra Ishvara Pranidhana in the Yogavalli, his commentary on the Yoga Sutras, he says the word Ishvara, Ishvara Shabdena, Ishvaram cha, Ishvarin cha, Ishvara and Ishvari. Ishvara means the God or in a masculine form. Ishvari means the goddess in the feminine form. So the word Ishvara represents both male and female forms. This is very, very important. So in a sense, we cannot ignore the feminine attribute of Ishvara, and therefore we have to accept that as well. That is why today we started with a chant called Chatushloki. Chatushloki is a composition by the great Yamunacharya, who was the teacher of Ramanujacharya, as well as the grandson of Nathamuni, and Yamunacharya is one of the most important acharyas of the Visishta Advaita tradition of the Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya, and he composes this verse, 4 verses. That is why it's called Chatushloki. Chatuhu means 4, and he composes these 4 verses on goddess Sri Devi, and this is why we chant this today, because this is relevant in this sutra. And Acharya Krishnamacharya says the word Pranidhanam can be equated to what is called Prapatti. Prapatti means like a surrender, a Sharanagati, a way where we are completely surrendering to the divine force of nature. See, one reason why we have a lot of problems in our mind, a lot of problems or dukkham in our life is because we are all control freaks. We like to control everything the way we want things to happen, the way we want how the world should work. We cannot even control ourselves, but we want to control everybody else and everything else in this world. We want to organize a program, then the weather should be fine, the food should be fine, the people should behave a certain way. We invite 100 people to the program, then the 100 people, 1 or 2 behave badly, we are agitated because they are not behaving like we want them to behave. So we want to control everything. But we cannot control everything. This is the reality of the world. That's why we have to accept the spontaneity of life, the spontaneity of nature. That is what the divine feminine represents. Divine feminine represents spontaneity, movement of this world. The world is not organized in a particular rational manner. Masculine energy is structures. Feminine energy is spontaneity. So we have to have a bit of both. We have to have a balance of the two. We cannot just have one. So when we are saying Ishvara Pranidhana, we are also saying we are surrendering to the spontaneity of nature, because the world behaves in a spontaneous way. We plan something, it rains. We cannot control that. We want to have an outdoor picnic, it rains. So we have to move and go indoors and have an indoor picnic, not an outdoor. We cannot complain. So many things like that happen. That is why we are agitated, because we are always trying to control, especially what is outside us. We cannot control that. The best we can do is control ourselves. And that also with great effort only we can control ourselves. It does not happen easily. So that is why Acharya Krishnamacharya says we have to surrender to both Ishvara and Ishvari, and he uses the word Prapatti, Sharanagati, Prapatti. Now for those who are familiar with the Visishta Advaita tradition or Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya, we can ask this question. Well, it says surrender to Ishvara and Ishvari, surrender to goddess and the god. In the Visishta Advaita tradition, they are also saying one thing. You can only surrender one time. You cannot surrender two times, because if you surrender two times, it means the first surrender was not really valid. Means that you did not really mean that I surrender to you. So why should you surrender two times? Why should you surrender to two people, etc.? So should we surrender to the goddess or should we surrender to God? So there is a question that is asked. So Ramanujacharya, one of the pioneers of the Visishta Advaita tradition, answers this question, because he himself is doing two surrenders to Srimati, Sridevi as well as Sriman Narayana. He says there is a form of Prapatti, surrender, called the Purushakara Prapatti, where you are surrendering first to the goddess feminine. You have to get the permission of the goddess before you can get the blessings of the god. So he says you have to first surrender to the divine feminine. If you cannot surrender to the goddess Sridevi, you cannot surrender to Sriman Narayana, because Sriman Narayana already means Sri is there sitting next to him. So if you cannot surrender to the divine feminine, you cannot surrender to the divine masculine. So you have to go through this process of first getting the blessings and grace of the divine feminine, Sridevi, before getting the blessings of the Sriman Narayana himself. And that is what different acharyas say. Even the Yamuna Acharya, that is why he is composing this Chatushloki, where he is saying this, where he is surrendering to the goddess feminine first. Same thing, Vedanta Deshika, another great pioneer, does this in the verse, in the composition called Shri Stuti. Manatita pratita vibhavam mangalam mangalanam vakshappitim madhu vijayino bhushayantim svakantya. He is saying we are surrendering to the goddess who is in the heart of Vishnu, because we have no other way to reach Vishnu without the access to the divine feminine. All those following the Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya believe in this idea, including Acharya Krishnamacharya. Acharya Krishnamacharya goes an extent further. He says, and that is what is yoga. He defines yoga in this way, as a process of reaching the divine knowledge through the teacher, the goddess Lakshmi and the Sriman Narayana. He defines this in a verse that is composed. Marut Hari Ramatarksha Bija Sankalanatimam Yogam Khagola Bhogola Vasibhyo Jivanam Viduhu. You have to first start with your breathing. Marut. Yoga is about breathing. Marut Hari Ramatarksha. Hari is Narayana. Rama is Sri Devi. You have to reach using the breath, these two. Through the guidance of the teacher. Tarksha represents Garuda, the eagle, the vehicle of Vishnu, which represents the teacher here. And this is the path of yoga. The path of yoga is the capacity for us to reach the divine, feminine and masculine together. That is why in our sampradaya, the Dampati is always honored. The Dampati means the couple. Ishvara is without Ishwari is not present for us. All the people, basically all the acharyas are saying that the couple, the divine couple must be honored. And this is very important for us to remember, because sometimes we should understand that yoga is not also gender biased. The Vedic tradition is also not gender biased. They actually talk about the harmony between the masculine and the feminine. And I have to say that this is not only the uniqueness of the Sri Vaishnava tradition, even the Shaiva traditions, they also talk about Narishvara. They talk about half, Shiva is like half male, half female. Even the great poet like Kalidasa talks about Parvati Parameshwarau. They are talking about both Parvati and Shiva. So this is a very strong idea in the Vedic tradition that there must be a balance between masculine and the feminine. So when we say Ishvara Pranidhana, we must not look at Ishvara only as a male form and say Ishvara is male. So even yoga and Vedic tradition is talking about the dominance of male. This is a male dominated teaching. It is not. So that is why this clarification is being given by Acharya Krishnamacharya and all the previous Acharyas who belong to the Sri Vaishnava tradition. And this is a very important aspect. So this is something that we have to remember as well, that Ishvara, even though the word is used only Ishvara, the Ishvara Padam, Ishvara Pada is representing both masculine and feminine. Ishvara Padam represents Ishvara and Ishwarim. So this is very important to understand. Now why is it that we have to surrender to Ishvara? Some more ideas I would like to explain, and these ideas are common to both Yoga school, Sankhya school, as well as the Vedanta school, Visishta Advaita school especially. In the Vedic tradition, that which frees us is knowledge. And when we say knowledge, we are not talking about information. Today we have all the information on Google. Whatever you want to search, you type a few words, you have all the information you want, whether it is right or wrong. For the Vedic tradition, they are saying, Viveka Khyati, the Brahma Vidya, that is knowledge of the divine. Knowledge of the divine is what will liberate you. Unlimited knowledge. Viveka Khyate. Patanjali says unlimited this knowledge. Now when we say unlimited knowledge, we are all, in modern language, this is all limiting words. It's not unlimited means like so much information you want. Go to Sangeeta restaurant here, they have limited meals, unlimited meals. Means you can eat whatever you want, unlimited meals. It's not that unlimited knowledge means that you have unlimited information. What it means is knowledge that has no limits. Knowledge that has no limit. What is the knowledge that does not have a limit? What is that knowledge that does not have a limit? That knowledge is that knowledge that represents the limitless. Right? What is limitless? What is limitless? Who is limitless? Limitless is Paramatma, Ananta. Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam, Brahma. Anantam means that has no end, no boundary. Certain things you can put into a boundary and say, okay, this is the defined limit of this entity. But some things are limitless. Some things are limitless. It's so vast. That is Paramatma. It is Paramatma. Now, the knowledge of Paramatma is what is going to free you. That is what is going to free you. Because everything which is limited is not going to free you because it has a limit. It's like a credit card, it has a limit. Daily limit. I want to go to the bank and I want to draw money. I can't even draw as much money as I have in the bank. Every day there is a limit. You cannot draw more than your daily limit. Plus you have, okay, you draw daily limit, but then you have a bank balance. You cannot draw more than your bank balance. You are limited by your balance. So that is a limit. Everything in this world has limits, but Paramatma is limitless. That is what frees us. But how can we know Paramatma? We are limited. We are limited. To give you a simple metaphor, many of you are carrying a bottle of water. That bottle of water has a limit. Somebody has 1 liter bottle, somebody has half liter bottle, somebody has big 2 liter bottle. That has a limit of 1 liter, that has a limit of 2 liters, that has a limit of half liter, etc. Can you fill the ocean with that? Cannot. Because ocean is unlimited. Same way, Paramatma is unlimited. Our mind is limited. Stoka prajnair anavadi gunam stuyase sa kathantvam. Vedanta Deshika is asking this question to Goddess. He says, Goddess, how can I understand you who are limitless when my mind is limited? My mind is limited. How can I understand you who are limited, unlimited? Bhuma yasya bhuvanam akhilam. Goddess, your place of occupancy is akhilam bhuvanam, the whole world. See, we all have an address. I live in one address, you live in one address, somebody else lives in one address. That is our location. We have a limited location. But Ishvara and Ishwari are everywhere. They are not limited. They are unlimited space and time. Not only space but also time. So he is asking this question, how can I understand you? Through my limitation of mind. And that's where the sutra comes. Because if that knowledge of unlimited Ishvara is going to free us, how can the limited mind that cannot comprehend the unlimited free us? The answer is, it cannot free us. It's why in the Visishta Advaita tradition, in the Sankhya tradition, in the Yoga tradition, Jnanam is not an attribute of Prakriti. Prakriti cannot have knowledge. Prakriti is not having the capacity for knowledge. It is Purusha that has the capacity for knowledge in the Sankhya and Yoga traditions. In the Vedanta tradition, it is Ishvara that has the capacity for knowledge. So if Prakriti cannot have knowledge, it automatically eliminates that mind cannot have the knowledge. And it's true. Mind cannot have knowledge. Just think about it. We all learn things, then we forget. Or we get dementia. Or we sleep. When we sleep, we don't have that knowledge. Especially Brahma Vidya, we cannot comprehend. So how can we be free? Can we be free? Patanjali is promising freedom. How can we be free? That's where the pranidhana comes in. Because Ishvara pranidhana is not surrender from intellect. It is a surrender of something that is deep inside our heart. We call this Atma Nikshepa. In the Shadanga Yoga of Nathamuni, Nathamuni presents this Atma Nikshepam, surrendering of the self. We give our heart to Ishvara so that that which is in the heart, which is unlimited, can connect with that which is unlimited. And this is very much from the Vedic tradition as well. Many times in the Mahanarayana Upanishad, many times in the Brihadaranya Upanishad, Chandogya Upanishad, in all the Upanishads, they say that the divine is not outside, it is inside each of us. So when we are doing pranidhanam, we are not surrendering our ego or intelligence or mind. We are surrendering from the heart so that there is a connection. That's why the word pranidhana is used. Dhanam is a link, support, connection. The heart which has the Ishvara inside is connecting to the Ishvara which is everywhere. That is the greatness of the Indian tradition. When we are putting the hands like this to somebody and say namaste, the word namaste comes from two parts. Namaha te, I bow to you. When we say I bow to you, who is bowing to whom? I am not bowing to the other person's ego. What we are saying is, I am bowing to the Ishvara in you. Therefore, I acknowledge the Ishvara in you. The other person is saying, I am bowing to you. They are not bowing to us, the ego. They are bowing to the Ishvara in us. So there is a connection between the Ishvara in one to the Ishvara in the other. The same thing we are doing when we are saying Ishvara Pranidhana. We are surrendering to the Ishvara that is guiding, that is inside us, that is inside everybody. This is the problem with many of us, which is we have lost the connection to the Ishvara that is residing in our heart. The Narayana Suktam says that Ishvara is inside, and that is why that is called heart. Hridayam tad vijaniyad vishwasyayatanam mahate. It is called Hridayam because Ishvara is there. Why is something called heart? Because it is in the center. Center, who should be in the center? The most important person is in the center. So it's called Pradhana position, the central position, the most important key position. So it's because Ishvara is in the heart, it is the center, it is the heart. When you measure the body, the heart is not literally the center. Somewhere else is the center. But it's a center because that is where the Ishvara is there, the capital of this system. So that's why the Ishvara Pranidhana Sutra in some way is a way in which we surrender to the Ishvara and Ishvari that is inside our heart. Ishvara and Ishvari are inside our heart. We don't have to search outside. We don't have to believe that it's only in a temple or a church or a building. And we cannot only believe that we can only access Ishvara through a middleman in the form of a priest or a magic man or a god man, etc. We all have the capacity and access to Ishvara, and that is the beauty of the yoga tradition, the Vedic tradition, where they say that Ishvara is very close and very accessible to you. You have to just look inside. So for me, this is very brilliant because Patanjali is basically saying that through the Ishvara Pranidhana Sutra, he is saying, look inward. The answer is all within you. The answer is not outside you. Maybe it's outside as well. And maybe the outside is very far for some of you. But your inside is never going to desert you. Wherever you are going, your heart comes with you. So you are never far away from that. You can be far from a temple. You can be far from a priest. You can be far from your teacher. Yes. But you are never far from that which is inside you. That is why through Ishvara Pranidhana, Patanjali is pointing us an inward direction. Some people in the yoga field call this as Antaranga Sadhana, a sadhana, a practice that takes us closer to that heart. So that is the concept of Ishvara Pranidhana in a very simple way. And it's very important for us to remember this, that answers to our problems and solutions are not always outside. It can also be from the inside. And the role of a teacher, the role of an acharya is to help us connect with the Brahma Vidya that is hiding in the heart. You can go to any Upanishad, they always say that the Ishvara is in your heart. You take the Taittiriya Upanishad, you will see this Brahma Vidapnoti Param Tadesha Bhyukta Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma Yo Veda Nihitam Guhayam Parame Vyoman. Brahma, who has the qualities of Satyam, Jnanam and Anantam, is hiding in the cave in your heart. It's not outside. You don't have to go to a cave in the Himalayas or the cave in another mountain. You only have to go to the cave inside your heart, that is called Hridayam. So that is the concept of Ishvara Pranidhana. It's a very important aspect, and this is something that we have to remember, that Ishvara Pranidhana is a process of redirecting our external journey towards the internal light that is there with us all the time. And another important thing that the Vedic tradition teaches us is, there is no entity in this world that is devoid of light. The Vedic tradition, when you read the Upanishads such as the Mahanarayana Upanishad, etc., says that all creations in this world have Ishvara inside. Even whether it's Chetana or Achetana. It means whether it's conscious or non-conscious. So we cannot say that some people have Ishvara, some people do not. Some people are chosen, some people are not chosen. We cannot say this. The Vedic tradition, they say that everybody is having the same access to Ishvara. There is no discrimination. Ishvara does not discriminate. Humans discriminate, Ishvara doesn't. This is very important for us to remember. So anyway, these are some of the ideas that are presented about the sutra Ishvara Pranidhana, and we have to remember this. In the next few sutras, Patanjali slowly starts to elaborate further, who is this Ishvara? So we'll start with the next sutra because Patanjali tries to define who is Ishvara. Klesha karma vipaka ashayaihi aparamrishtaha purusha visheshaha Ishvaraha. Klesha, karma, vipaka, ashaya, aparamrishtaha. There are four parameters Patanjali is listing which normally affects us. What are the four parameters? Kleshas. Kleshas are the five kleshas such as avidya, which is ignorance, asmita, ego, raga, desire, dvesha, aversion, and abhinivesha, fear. These are five kleshas that affect us. We are all affected by it. Then there is karma, actions. We are all affected by actions. All our actions have consequences. We do something good happens to us. We do something bad things happen to us. Kleshas are influencing our actions. So, actions based on kleshas have a certain kind of consequences. Actions based on not kleshas have certain other consequences. It all affects us. Then vipaka, results. All actions have results. I write an exam, I have two possibilities. I pass or I fail. If I pass, it has a certain influence on me. If I fail, it has an influence on me. I play a game of cricket with a team. My team wins or my team loses. It has two consequences. This is vipaka, fruits of action. Every action has some fruits. The fruits affect us. It's not as if we are free from the fruits. The fruits are affecting us. In fact, sometimes we are affected not only by our actions now, sometimes we are affected by actions we have done in the past. What is called sanchita karma. We have done actions already before, sometimes not even us, sometimes our ancestors, but we are still affected by that. That is vipaka. We are affected by the fruits of actions. But not only that, there is ashaya, leftover feelings. Ashaya means like a feeling which remains. You may pass the exam, you may fail the exam, but that feeling is remaining. The exam is over 5 years ago, but you still have that feeling that is affecting you and makes you feel bad. This is what is called ashaya. We are affected by all of these. That's why we suffer. Ishvara is aparamrishtaha. He is not affected by any of these. He is not affected by any of these. Kleshas do not affect Ishvara. Ishvara has no kleshas. We have kleshas, Ishvara has no klesha. Karma. Ishvara is not affected by actions or its consequences. Ishvara is above that. Results. Ishvara doesn't care whether India is winning the cricket match or Pakistan is winning the cricket match. Ishvara does not care. The results do not bother Ishvara. Because both are children of Ishvara. Doesn't bother. He is free. And Ishvara has no leftover impression. Ishvara is free of this kind of ashayas. Now, who can such a person be? Can that person be normal? That person cannot be normal. That is why Patanjali says, Purusha Visheshaha Ishvaraha. He is a special Purusha. By qualifying Ishvara as a special Purusha, it separates, Patanjali separates the Jivatma and Paramatma. There is a difference between Jivatma and Paramatma in the yoga philosophy. This is once again an argument or a proof that yoga is not Advaita. A lot of people interpret yoga as Advaita, non-dual. But Patanjali says, sorry, there is a difference between Jivatma and Paramatma. Because Jivatma can be trapped by suffering. And at that time, it is called Baddhatma. The moment it is trapped by suffering, it is Baddhatma. But Ishvara is not trapped by suffering. Ishvara is above. So, the Atma, Jivatma can exist in 3 states. Baddhatma, Muktatma and Nityatma. There are 3 possibilities. Ishvara is separate from all the 3. It can be bound, it can be free, Mukta, or it can be permanently happy once it has freed itself. It can, at once the Mukti is happening and the Jivatma merges with Paramatma, it becomes what is called Nityatma because it is eternally connected to Paramatma. So, the Jivatma can exist in 3 different states. But Paramatma is only in 1 state. Paramatma cannot be in different states. It can only be in 3 states, especially Paramatma cannot be in a state of baddha, bondage. Therefore, Jivatma, Paramatma are different. They are not the same according to yoga philosophy. This is the separation of yoga from Sankhya philosophy. Because Sankhya does not talk about Ishvara. For Sankhya, there is only Jivatma. There is no Paramatma in Sankhya philosophy. Yoga separates from Sankhya at this juncture. It is saying there is a Purusha Vishesha. There is an extra Purusha that is different from all others. The Vedanta philosophy completes that definition by saying that Purusha, which is special, is Paramatma, is the creator, is the source. Naranam Ayanam iti Narayanaha. That is where we all come from. That is where we will all go back to. That is the source and that is the destination. So, in this point, when Patanjali is defining, two things he is saying. One, he says, Ishvara is unaffected by any of these. Klesha, Karma, Vipaka, Ashaya. These four attributes normally affects Prakriti, normally affects Jivatma. But Ishvara is not affected by this. Therefore, Ishvara is a separate entity. It's a very remarkable sutra, and it is the sutra that slightly differentiates yoga philosophy from Sankhya philosophy. That's why yoga philosophy is called Sa Ishvara Sankhya. Sankhya with the inclusion of the Ishvara principle, because many of the theoretical principles of yoga comes from Sankhya philosophy. But at the same time, it's different because there is a Ishvara principle where the Ishvara is presented as a Purusha Vishesha, which means that it is at an elevated place. It is not the same Purusha. So there is a hierarchy of at least three. There is Prakriti, there is Purusha, there is Ishvara. There is a hierarchy of three. Ishvara is at the top. Below that, below that is the Jivatmas or the Purushas. Below that is Prakriti. This is very important distinction between yoga and Sankhya philosophy. And this is one of the things that Patanjali wants to clarify, because people can ask the question, who is Ishvara? Because Sankhya was the dominant philosophy at that time, and Patanjali diverges and takes one step further. And that is where he brings in the quality of Ishvara as a Purusha Vishesha, a special entity. So that is why when we take this principle, it is very clear that yoga is not non-dualism. It is not Advaita. Yoga is definitely acknowledging the presence of at least two different forms of consciousness. That is Jivatma and Paramatma. There is two different forms at least of consciousness, and this is something that we should not forget. So this is the first stage of the definition of Ishvara.